episode focusing on old video games. This time it was a retro rewind on Pokemon, and that was voted on and selected by you, the community. So in this month's episode, we're going to discuss Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. Zach, cue the music.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Retro Rewind, brought to you by Nintendo Dads over at VGTribune.com, patreon.com/Nintendo Dads, all that good stuff. So this is, of course, my name is Zach Erickson. Tonight is barely April 6th, 2016, and this is the April edition of Retro Rewind. Joining me tonight is Pokemon Master Justin Masson. What's going on, Justin?
I have got my Charizard rocking it. I am a Pokemon master.
Did you just say Charizard?
I did.
It's a D on the end of that.
Charizard?
Man.
Charizard?
Yeah. It's like a lizard.
Oh.
Maybe that's his nickname.
Yeah, no, maybe it is. You know what? If that's his
get all
nickname.
judgy.
Hey, you know what? That's okay. I just know I'm gonna save you from the Poke fans
who would rip me apart.
Yeah. Right on. Joining us. Speaking of ripping us apart, joining us as well is Jesse Waldeck. What's going on, Jesse?
I don't have anything to say about that.
No.
You caught me off guard on that one.
Right on. So, of course, again, this is Retro Rewind is where we play an old video game and talk about it for about an hour. And we do that every single month. So this month, of course, Nintendo released Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow onto the eShop on the 3DS, which, if you don't know, if you haven't done that yet, what are you doing? There's no excuse now. One thing before we even get started, I was surprised. I don't know if surprised is the right word, but they priced them. They weren't shy about pricing these at a slightly higher level than most Game Boy Classic games are on the eShop. I thought that was interesting.
Almost double.
Yeah, it was like $10, wasn't it?
Yeah, normally Game Boys are $5 at most, sometimes even less.
Yeah, so
well, they were riding the nostalgia hit, right? Like, I mean, they drop it right before they dropped it, or they put it out a couple weeks after the Super Bowl commercial about the you can get them or go get them. You can do it commercial, right?
You can do that. There we go.
Yeah, you can do that. They did the whole promotional video beforehand, getting excited for Pokemon. There was a big event at the New York City stores, so like they were riding the hype train. So they're like, and a couple of extra dollars.
Yeah,
right? So
and the TCG they've been doing as well. The trading card game, they've been releasing like monthly boxes. There's this line of a line of Pokemon cards. It's like a set of generations, and normally you can buy like a $5 booster pack or stuff like that. This one you can only buy in collector's bundles and stuff like that, and there's new ones every month. And I've been kind of picking those up as they come out too. And so me and like the Erickson household, there has been a lot of Pokemania going on right now, so it's been really fun. It's been exciting. So Justin, you had never played this game at all before.
Yeah,
I am really interested in your take on it. Like, what was your expectation going into it? And you said you haven't finished the game by any stretch here, but from what you have experienced of the game, what are your thoughts, man? I'm really excited to hear your thoughts.
Sure, yeah. So I think I mentioned before, like I was really kind of phased out of the Nintendo world when Pokemon kind of hit the scene. So my experience with looking at Pokemon in a bigger sense, right, has always kind of been this weird kind of childish game, right? And I think this is the interesting thing I was thinking about it this morning about Pokemon is it is like I used to always think it was owned by Nintendo, right? But no, there's a separate company that owns Pokemon, right? Mm-hmm. That Nintendo just works together with them. So that was one thing that I found out later that I thought was interesting.
Game Freak is the designer, they're the game designers, and the Pokemon Company is its own company.
Yeah, separate from Nintendo. So I didn't really realize that because I thought, Pokemon has become worldwide such a recognizable brand, especially Pikachu, right? For the Pokemon brand, right? So, and it's just so. And when you look at then like Nintendo, it's kind of like best friends, Pokemon and Mario, right? So I
Hmm.
didn't realize that they were kind of separate, and just that kind of just mass worldwide domination that Pokemon has had. But I've always associated with children, right? Relatively young children, and but I didn't really understand the game enough to understand like what's the draw of it. So when I came into this game, like I had really kind of low expectations of I know there was this guy with a hat that threw a ball, something jumps out of it, and they fight, right? So I was kind of like, okay, let's see how this goes. So I had kind of relatively low expectations. The thing that kind of got me really interested was the excitement that everybody had around, there is red, blue, and yellow. Which one are you choosing? And I was like, does it really matter? But
Yeah, but
what I discovered to people is that it does matter because there is an emotional tie-in, or emotionally people are connected with the Pokemon. You told the story, Zach, of you being very connected with the blue one, the Balbazar one, I believe you're mentioning.
Blastoise was
Blastoise.
yeah.
Yeah, like your emotional attachment to that, and we see that later in some of the emails that we receive. That like people are just, it's kind of like, you pick your hockey team and you stick with your hockey team no matter what, good, bad, or ugly, right? And that was kind of what it reminded me of as you picked your Pokemon, and what did that say about you as your starting Pokemon? So I jumped in this kind of like I'm just open to it. Let's see what happens. What happened was I became very pleasantly surprised by this game, and I began
Nice.
to really enjoy the game. Now, the story, and I'm comparing and contrasting as to we're playing a bit of Earthbound right now, but is very simple,
Hmm.
right? Like it's a very simple story. It's kind of very linear in that way of like, here's your objective, go do this thing. But what I found was, interacting with individuals within the city, exploring around, grinding, finding new Pokemon to fight. Excuse me, leveling up your Pokemon. I thought that was always very exciting. I was like, yeah, and
He's
then
evolving. Yes.
yeah, and then
That
like
was
getting more Pokemon into your collection, and then like how you use them at, you run into, another Pokemon trainer, and he's got three, he's got two or three balls, and you've got two or three, and it's kind of like, okay, well, who's the more powerful, and who am I matching up against what? So there's a level of strategy to it. That I really quite found I enjoyed. I also found it was a lot more difficult than I actually thought it was going to be, and I think maybe that's because of my predisposition or thinking that it was aimed at children. I was like, oh, it's going to be relatively easy, right? But it really wasn't. Like I died several times. I guess the word is not died, right? But I did both.
blood.
All of my Pokemon fainted, and I was not able to
Then you passed
carry
out.
on, and I passed out, right?
Which is
Um,
the funniest visual ever. It's like,
mhm.
can you imagine like if they would have that exact thing in the anime, right? It's like you have a Pokemon battle and then all of your Pokemon are fainted and then the trainer just passes out, just keels over. Oh crap! Now we have to take him back to the hospital.
Mhm.
Where it's like,
So I found I was like, oh, okay, well, I've really, before I go into this cave, I've got to really make sure that I'm leveled up. I've got all my potions, I got my antidotes. Everybody's kind of full strength. I've healed everybody. Do I have the right Pokemon? Like, because I talked to you before that I got some snake stone thing that was just crud, and I was like, you're garbage. Let's get out of here. And I couldn't figure out how to get rid of him. I finally figured that out. Um, but I really really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it from being on the handheld that I could just jump in and play for 20 minutes if I wanted to, grind a little bit, save, and I was off, right? It's a really easy, great pick up and go game, which I can see why the appeal of it being on a handheld, especially in 3DS, but especially when it was released on the Nintendo, or sorry, the Game Boy, what that did for them as a company. We can talk about that later as well. Um, so I was really like, and I as I'm playing through it, I was like, I can totally see the appeal of it. And I remember watching that Pokemon kind of like through the years trailer,
mm-hmm.
where they're like showing kind of the evolution of the game. I was getting to a point where I was like, "Oh man, I want to play that game. I want to try that game. I want to try that game." I was like, "Man, I wish there was a new Pokemon to play." I was like, "Oh yeah, there is a new Pokemon to play. Sun and Moon coming out." I'm like, and here's the thing, I'm excited to play that game. And
Yeah.
I really, and I, we talked about it before. Like, I don't like other things I don't fully understand. I don't really fully understand the whole Pokédex thing. I don't really get the whole Pokemon Bank thing, what the value is. but I love when I boil it down to just fun and gameplay. I really had a great time with this game.
How was the how much did you pick up the typing of the Pokemon? Like, did you take any time? Like, did you have like that as a reference? Because that is a huge part of the strategy of that game. So like going through and like, oh crap, this one that I'm going up against is a rock and ground type. You know, like that first gym. Okay, he's got rock Pokemon, and I've got a fire guy. Like, crap, what do I do? Or you know, did you find yourself like leaning into that at all, or?
I recognize, like, oh yes, you know, for example, you know, there's a water Pokemon, right? So I recognized that it was mentioned, but I don't think I was educated enough to figure out how I would combat that in a way that'd be effective. So I'd just be like, okay, well, you're water, whatever. So it just means that like my guy won't do as much damage, but I'll still work you. And it was like, no, I still just lost.
Yeah, not only is it you won't do as much damage, but he'll double damage you.
Yeah, so there was
both ways.
Yeah, there definitely got to a point where I was like, I feel like I need to educate myself a bit more about what's effective in this scenario, right? So I didn't feel like I used that as well as I should have. And I know that, you know, you and Jesse have talked about, like, you know, just kind of, you guys have said words about Pokemon that I don't even understand if they're English. But like, you guys kind of knew what was going on, so yeah.
Well, and it, like, looking at this, like, there are how many types now, Jesse? They've added 3 types since this game. Because one of the things that is very clear, I guess, was that in this game in particular, when this game came out, they have made changes to the type matchups, and they also added types in order to attempt to balance it. Because in this game, if you ever got a psychic Pokemon, they were super overpowered and you know, really, like, they really didn't have any weaknesses and was super effective against a lot of different types. But I mean, so you've got, I think it's up to 18 different types now. Every Pokemon can have 2 types, and then every attack is a certain type. And so like the barrier to entry, like the learning curve for this game, I think I take it for granted because it's so, the thing as well is that the game, when you bought this game originally, it had a pretty cool manual that came with it that had the type chart, and that like my Pokemon Blue manual was worn, like it was well worn. I carried that thing with me for a long time until I'd basically memorized the type matchups, you know, as a kid. And so yeah, I think it's interesting, and it's a game that doesn't necessarily teach it to you in the game. You kind of have to learn, again, because it came with that manual. I think the kid, you know, I just learned it from the manual. I never learned it from in the game. So yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, every new Pokemon game, I always grab like the strategy guide, and that's like the first thing I have to remind myself of is the type chart.
And they always like
I'll
between
probably make a copy of it so I have something I can pull out of the book, or I think even I think the 5th generation even had a little thing that already had a pull out for you, so I didn't have to do it.
Yeah, and so, like, even looking at this, they sometimes change the type matchups too, right? And so like
a little bit, but
every once in a while they'll change them a little bit, but in newer versions of the game. But yeah, so it's pretty amazing. I just really am enjoying it. So looking at this as well, what I'd love to is, Justin, you played red, right? I played,
Yes.
Jesse, you played yellow?
yes.
Okay. And so I think the cries were the same. I found this really awesome video that I wanted to do here. This video is called Pokemon with Similar Cries. So what you kind of notice is that some of the Pokemon will end up having this. I'm going to play some of these sound clips for no other reason that I think that it's fun to hear them, but also I want to see if you guys can guess what they are. Oh gosh, that first one, I don't even know what that is. Hang on. So here's this first one. Okay, what's that one? Anybody know?
I've never been able to identify the Pokemon by their cries. They're so horrible.
We're gonna do this for the listeners too, see if they got that. Was Charizard.
Mm-hmm.
You recognize it, Justin?
Yeah.
And Rhyhorn, which I don't know if you ran into him, but Rhyhorn is a rock ground type. So here's another one. Anybody?
Probably something electric.
No. I'll play it again. I'll see.
That was not the same one.
That was not the same one. They were similar. These are similar. The first one was Porygon. So you were close. He's actually normal type, but Porygon is the
Right.
sort of like computer polygonal duck, and the second one was Victory Bell. So here's the next one.
I thought when you said you were going to play it again, I thought you were actually going to play that one again, not the second.
Yeah,
one.
sorry, no, I got a video.
I got confused.
Okay, here we go. So here's another one.
Wow. Snorlax.
I'm gonna play. No, it's Mewtwo.
Okay.
Here. It's a little bit different. That one is Parasect. They very similar. So here, this one is going to be 3 times, and they all are fairly similar. So that was 3 different ones. Any idea?
The first
Not
and third sound,
clue.
I think, exactly the same.
Yeah. That was Ditto, Jigglypuff, and Poliwag. See, and I'm saying a bunch of names, and Justin is like, I don't know what the heck you're talking about.
I know Charizard, and I know Jigglypuff.
Yeah, see, did you get a Jigglypuff?
I ran into one somewhere. One of the trainers had one, and I wanted to steal it, and I couldn't. That wasn't fun.
Did you try to throw your Pokeball
I
at
did.
it?
I did that a couple times actually. I was like, oh, I want that, and then the ball comes back, and they're like, it's not cool to steal. I was like, oh yeah, sorry.
Oh, yeah, I guess plus Jigglypuff is in Smash Brothers too, right?
Yeah, like they're so like if they were in Smash, I kind of recognize them that way. But if they were not, like, and actually, in all fairness, playing playing Pokemon Shuffle, I recognize Mewtwo.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Did you ever see the Pokemon Origins movie?
No.
I did, yeah.
You should go back and find that.
It's pretty cool.
It's really good.
Yeah.
It's a retelling of the Generation 1 game story. And it's not Ash, it is Red.
Yeah, and
then it at the very last chapter works in some Gen 6 stuff.
yeah, I think as well it's interesting because they that is what I wanted that anime to be, the original anime. I've never really been a fan of the Pokemon anime. As much as I like, I've seen quite a bit of it, but I've always kind of thought like I've said before, the Pokemon universe in red and blue specifically always seemed to, like, my imagination filled in the gaps, and like with Team Rocket being this sort of organization that is this crime syndicate that is using Pokemon to, you can imagine in my head it was always like this. It's like the freaking crime boss who has this huge monster that he can call out at any time to do his bidding. It always felt like they were selling it short, especially with like Team Rocket, who in the TV show that was like they were super whiny and crappy and lame and whatever. But yeah. So all right, one more. Let's see if I can find a good one here. Here, Justin. Here's one you might have recognized here.
Oh. Is it the bird?
No. Here, I'll do it. I don't. Oh, you know what? You may have not gotten him because you did Pokemon Red.
Yeah.
That was Caterpie and Goldeen.
Okay. Yeah. No.
Yeah, you got. Yeah.
Thanks for being a jerk about that one.
Yeah, you lose. Actually, right on. So yeah, I definitely think that this game, one of the things that is interesting is again, what is so important to Pokemon is that the central mechanism of trading, right? The trading side of it. Growing up, I think one of the things that I distinctly remember was, and they've even said in interviews and things like that about what was really important in the development of the game, was the trading element of it. Being able to trade your Pokemon with your friends, and which is the entire reason why they had the 2 different versions. But I specifically remember being at a basketball tournament, and I grew up in like rural, like small town southern Alberta, and there was this basketball tournament, and we were in the cultural hall of the local church, and they had like a stage in the gym that they would set up the chairs and people could do like stage shows or whatever. And so, but they would set up chairs on the stage so that people could watch from the stage to watch this basketball tournament. And I remember distinctly me and a friend sitting like backstage with like our link cabled Game Boys playing like trading Pokemon over, in between matches and stuff like that. It was really, really fun. I just have so many fond memories of just this game in general, playing it a bunch. So were you going to say something, Jesse?
I don't think so.
So yeah, and I think that's one thing with these 3DS or with the Virtual Console releases that I'm a little bit sad that they weren't able to nail down the internet trading. But I mean, with any of the other games, with Sun and Moon, we will be able to eventually, Justin, we will be able to trade our Pokemons.
Sweet.
Hands together. What about our one of the things that's great is we've got our awesome, Cass Lush making our sweet documentaries every month for us. Are there any nuggets there, Justin, from what you learned from there? Interesting tidbits.
Yeah, I thought there was actually a couple of interesting things that came out from it. So originally, it wasn't called Pokemon, right? It was originally released with the title of Pocket Monsters. So I thought that was a very interesting piece of information that came out of it. Originally, there was 150 available Pokemon, but 151, there ended up being 151 in the end because of a glitch, which was officially distributed by Nintendo. So I thought that was very interesting.
That was with Mew, right?
Yeah, with Mew. So that was kind of cool.
It never made sense to me why Mew was the 151 and Mewtwo was 150.
Yeah, that seemed a bit odd.
That's weird.
Mm-hmm. Couple other things that I thought were... So this game came out near the end. So if we actually look at the release schedules for this, in Japan it was 1996, North America 1998. So this was again released originally on the Game Boy. And so the Game Boy was nearly 10 years old, definitely in its kind of last hoorah in its life cycle. And yet this game actually kind of reinvigorated the Game Boy. And so much so that when they remade, or when they actually came out later with the Game Boy Advance, they came out with, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green released back in 2004. So this game actually kind of like helped kind of reaffirm the handheld as a mobile console, but also kind of really helped to keep Nintendo's, so to say, lights on during the mobile years.
Yeah, that's crazy. Like I never really realized how that's insane. Like the fact that it was 10 years old when that came out, like that is the fact that it was that successful. And I guess maybe it has to do as well with like what was out 10 years ago? Like when did the DS come out?
2004.
Okay, so 2004. So can you imagine
10 years ago was the Wii launch. The PS3 launch.
Like that is a long time for a console to be like a handheld console to be successful like that, right? And then to have it continue for another when did the GBA came out? What I don't even know.
GBA came out early 2000, I think.
2000, 2001. No,
GBA was later than that, wasn't it? GBA
Game Boy Color was 2000, I think, or 99 or 2000. So Game Boy Color GBA would have been 2002, 2001.
So like 4 years later, 2002.
I know GBA had a short lifespan just because DS launched in 2004. Even though how strong GBA was, Nintendo wanted to kill it and couldn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so like 2001 is when it was released in North America. So 3 years later, right? And I think it's just so interesting to me how long that lasted. Like that Game Boy just lasted forever. And I remember specifically as well growing up I have a bin full of old stuff here, but like my Game Boy Brick and playing the crap out of Pokemon Blue on that, and then when when Pokemon Silver came out, like I never got Pokemon Yellow. I just kept playing Pokemon Blue, and then when Pokemon Silver came out, which was the second game, that game was crazy because it was now in full color, and I had a Game Boy Color, and it was a full color game, and playing that, and just, oh my goodness, look how detailed this game is, and playing that like with the different the color was just a huge deal. And I specifically remember, like, as much as I loved Pokemon Blue, and that is definitely the one that will always kind of go down for me as the most nostalgic, the one that I've always felt was the best in the series was Pokemon Gold and Silver, or specifically Pokemon Crystal, but like Pokemon Gold and Silver, because essentially what they did was it was a direct sequel to Red and Blue, right? Like Red and Blue, or later games, they kind of have different sequels here and there, but like the timeline starts to get muddy. But this was a direct sequel to Red and Blue, where in Gold and Silver you actually end you go through the 8 badges, you beat the Elite Four, and then you go back to Kanto, which is the region in the first game, and you beat all of those gym leaders again, right? And you kind of see who are gym leaders that are still there, and who are, like Brock is still in Pewter City, and so on. But
then you have a deep, in-depth conversation with the champion.
Yeah, right. And that's great. Like you end up fighting the protagonist from Red and Blue as the final boss of Gold and Silver, right? So and he's got like the full team of like Pikachu and Charizard and Blastoise and Venusaur and Snorlax,
level
and
70s and 80s.
Yeah, like super high level.
And when
right?
I mean deep conversation, I mean you have two silent protagonists, so it's ...
Yeah,
literally.
They just stare at each other. Which is super cool. And I loved how in Gold and Silver too, how they have the where you just got to catch up with some of those, with the gym leaders specifically. Like you would go to where was it? Fuchsia City, which is like the poison gym leader Koga in the first one, and in the second one it's his daughter who's there. And then you have
Koga make it into Elite Four or something?
Yeah, he becomes a member of the Elite Four. And then the Justin, spoiler alert for Pokemon Red and Blue, do you want to know?
Sure.
The head of Team Rocket, like the top of the organization, ends up being the final gym leader that you fight. So he turns out to actually be this gym leader who is in, the very first town that you go through, there's a Pokemon gym there, but the gym leader's not there.
Yeah.
It turns out that it's the guy who runs that gym is actually the leader of Team Rocket. Giovanni is his name, yeah. And so then in Gold and Silver, you have the whatever the rival's name is in the anime, it's Gary, but like Blue or whatever you call him, right? I think they actually do call him Blue in Gold and Silver. He is sort of the replacement gym leader in that gym. So I thought that was kind of cool too. It was really cool just to see that it was a very awesome continuation. And if there's one thing that I really would love for them to do is to try and have a little bit more continuity between the Pokemon. That's kind of what has kind of bothered me since Gold and Silver with the Pokemon games, is that they kind of just reset every time, and there's no continuity between the regions. And I would love for Gold and Silver to have some sort of, for Pokemon Sun and Moon to have, for us to be able to go back to Kanto or Johto or these old regions from some of the earlier games, to kind of revisit those characters and things like that. I would love that. And it just seems weird to me that they just hit the reset button every single generation and they never go back to some of those characters that a lot of people have nostalgia for. So anyway, I've been doing a lot of talking. What is everybody else? Any other thoughts? We have some awesome stuff from our community as well, Justin.
Yeah, one of the things before we kind of get to that, one of the things that I'm really quite impressed with for Pokemon is the longevity of the franchise and really the generational connectiveness that individuals have with it. So you've told us very frequently how much you've played it and how much you enjoyed growing up with it and loving it, right? But I mean, it's now celebrating its 20 years, and how, there are people like you who grew up with, who are now adults having their own children. Who, I mean, I'm sure Nick probably loves the game. Right? You've already talked about how there's like Pokemon fever in your house, which sounds like a bad disease. But like that kind of long-term
Call Dr. Mario.
that like long-term generational consumer is such an amazing thing, because your memories of it are probably so positive and strong, right, that you want to share in this experience. And I think that that's something that, Nintendo does that with their characters, but I think there's something very simple and innocent just with Pokemon and how it's kind of aimed at children, but there are also larger messages in there, right? Like, don't steal, right? Like that's just kind of be nice, right? Treat the environment with respect, right? There's some larger themes there that I think are not as simple as throw a ball battle. The fact that no one dies, they faint, right? Like that's a really cool perspective as well, right? I think that there's just a lot of value in messaging in the Pokemon universe, and I think that cannot be missed when you think about, from a parenting perspective, introducing games to your children as well. So that's my opinion.
Well, and that's the thing too, is that's interesting for me is that with Nick now, because he got a new 2DS for Christmas and it came with Pokemon X installed on it. And he has powered through a very large chunk of that game. He has gotten through half that game, and that boy he's in kindergarten, right? And so it's funny though, because like over the past year, as he's starting to learn how to read a little bit, I think that him playing through that game is good, because he's also kind of struggling to read it, right? And he knows his letters, and so he's sitting there trying to sound out these words, and he'll look at something and say, "Oh, I know this. Like, what is this one? What's this Pokemon's name?" And he'll kind of sound it out, and then he'll either be like, "Oh yeah, Dad, no, it's this guy," and he'll actually know the name, or he'll come to me and be like, "What does this say?" And I'll like tell him. He's like, "Oh, okay," and then he like walks away and he's like, "All right, I got it now," right? And so, games like this, I don't really hesitate giving him a game that is above his reading level, because I'm like, dude, you're gonna figure it out and you're gonna be better for it. You know what I mean? I think it's really interesting, and again, it's so like a cross generational sort of game. I mean, you see it even in that ad that they did, right? Like absolutely. Turning to the boy and you can do that, right? So,
well, I kind of laugh as you're kind of talking about Nick working through his reading, right? I'm like, guess what words you will probably never hear on a spelling test? True. Any Pokemon title ever.
Evolution.
Charizard.
Yes. Yeah, right on. Very cool. So, why don't we get into our stuff from the community, shall we?
Do it. Let's go to a listener voicemail.
You do the voicemail first? Let's do it. All right, I'm going to play this. This is from Randon Arnold. Let's go for it.
Hello, Nintendo Dad. This is Randon Arnold, and I wanted to leave my retro rerun impressions for Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. So, as a kid, I didn't really play a whole lot of Red, Blue, and Yellow. I mean, my brother was really into Pokemon, but I didn't get into it until Gold and Silver, and then eventually on my own, Ruby and Sapphire. But I did play the original games, but the most I remember from Red, Blue, and Yellow actually was Fire Red and Leaf Green, because those came out when I was able to comprehend the series a little bit more. But Pokemon has been a big part of my life as a gamer and just socially. As a kid, I didn't have a whole lot of friends, really any, and so I would go to Pokemon tournaments for the card game, and I played competitively, and I made a lot of great friends that I still have today, and it helped me prepare social skills and just test those out and just help me become a better person. So Pokemon definitely has made a huge impact on my life, and I hope it will continue to make impact on other kids' lives as it did mine. Replaying the game, it definitely feels a lot more difficult. It's missing a lot of mechanics I like, and grinding is not as easy as it is in X and Y. But as going back to the start of the series 20 years ago, it's just so great to look back and look at a series that I hold dear to my heart and that I probably can hold a lot of my life to. I don't know what would have happened if I didn't have friends. But it's just great to think, and like, glad you guys are doing it for Retro Rewind. So thanks for listening, and I hope to see you guys when I'm on the show next week, April 13th. Thank you.
Right on, Randon. Thank you, good sir. It's
That was a really, thank you for sharing that. Like, that's pretty deep, and like, really, we talked about, how gaming can have an influence or an impact on your life. And I think that's, Randon, that's a great example of just how gaming can do that in ways that you don't really think of at the time, but in hindsight, you're like, oh yeah, that was pretty huge. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so interesting because I think that there are a lot of people who look at video games, and not just video games, but just gaming in general, right? Like the whole sort of game store culture and stuff like that as well. With the trading card game, perfect example. That Random brings up, that they kind of just look at it as a hobby, right? Just, it's just something you do and whatever, and a lot of times I kind of get that sort of. People don't actually say it, but they kind of get that reaction when I say, "Oh yeah, I have a Nintendo podcast, and I talk about Nintendo games and things like that." They're like, "Oh, that's nice," right? But not realizing that what this really can be, and that has the potential to be, is a vehicle to bring people together, right? And I think that especially with Pokemon, that was such a huge design goal for them, was that trading aspect, right? Like linking those cables together and really connecting with, metaphorically connecting with your friends, and physically actually, like there's like connecting people together and forming friendships. Huge, right? Absolutely a huge part of that. Absolutely.
So,
thank you so much, Random, for that.
I guess then, Zach, to kind of raise a question, you kind of mentioned how, this one, they didn't have the internet connectivity to, with the 3DS version, to be able to, you and I could swap online. Do you feel then with that statement that that's something you really want, knowing that the desire of Pokemon was really to meet together and have that interconnected cable? Do you still see that? Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Yeah. I think it's a little bit different nowadays because the internet allows us to connect together over the internet, right? Like we can have this conversation and not be, whereas back then, I mean, I guess we could have used the phone, but you know what I mean? So I think in that sense, it's a little bit different.
Sure.
And I'm glad that they are doing, like, I mean, nowadays the internet trading is just a huge thing. But to a certain extent, and I know that I've even seen quotes from the creators that are just like, you know what? They fought the desire to do wireless trading for a while. Like they didn't necessarily want to do it because what happened was, as soon as people could trade their Pokemon online, they stopped meeting. It kind of prevented that connection from happening in person. And I think that to a certain extent that is kind of sad. I don't necessarily think for the 3DS releases that they need to artificially block that if there was a capability. I think they mostly did that because just for technical reasons and for the amount of effort that would probably go into doing internet connections. But
right. And that's something that I did not get an opportunity to do, was to connect with anyone to swap, or trade or battle Pokemon at all, right? And I'm going up to a geek conference in about 3 weeks from now, and I really hope that somewhere there I'm going to bump into somebody. They probably will have it, but just to do that, to have that kind of that Pokemon experience, right?
Yeah. If I end up going to that, by the way, which I don't know if there's still tickets. Yeah, I don't know if there's still tickets, but I was talking to my wife about that today. But anyway, if I end up going, then we should do that.
Yes, we should.
But yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely it's really fun. It's just a good time. It was really neat. So again, thanks, Randon. That was a super cool call. So thanks again. Should we go get into these emails here? Sorry, were you going to finish up there, Justin? I didn't want to.
No, that was it. That was definitely it.
That was it. All right. Okay, cool. Right on. So let's get into our emails here. This first one is from Phoenix.
Yep.
It says, I was in 6th grade when this game was released and didn't quite understand it until I finally bothered my parents enough to buy the game for me. I fell deep into the world of Pokemon and the endless need of replacement batteries for my Game Boy. Oh my gosh, that is a real thing. Good thing Costco sold batteries, by the way. The Costco battery brick is a godsend. I was lucky enough to find friends that brought their Game Boys to school regularly to trade with our hip link cables. Great memories. I'm now 29, a husband, a parent, and graduate, yet I'm still playing Pokemon. This game is truly unbreakable. I cannot wait for Sun and Moon. Long live Pikachu, Phoenix. This actually reminds me, I love that email. The idea of bringing your Game Boy to school. I remember doing that a lot, and I remember specifically at one point, actually, it's a very distinct memory for some reason, but actually sitting, I was like in science class, and we kind of had one of those big desks, that had like the hollow underneath there or whatever, and sitting there kind of like leaning back with one hand kind of underneath, in the middle of class, with one hand inside my desk, just like kind of leaning back, and could barely see it, and and playing with one hand. And then,
I'm sure from the teacher's perspective that did not look good.
I didn't even think about that, but I was just sitting like leaning back, trying to play my game.
Trying to play your game.
Yeah, exactly.
It's growing. Pikachu's growing. But I love what Phoenix talks about here, and again, it goes back to the long life of this game. Right, and this kind of it gets its hooks into you. And I love the statement here. This game is truly unbreakable, right? And I think it's just the longevity of, and I'm even finding that now, Phoenix, to kind of connect with you, and that is like, I didn't play this as a kid. I don't have long-term memories associated, but there is something in the DNA of this game that makes you want to keep coming back to it and playing it. Whether you're 6, 16, 26, 36, or 66, you want to continue to play it. And again, this is my first exposure to it. I've only been playing it for a month. I am really excited for Sun and Moon. I have no reason to. We haven't even seen gameplay footage. But I am excited for it because if this is kind of like the rezzed up pretty version of what I'm getting here, yeah, I'm all in.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Right on. Let's get to our last email here, shall we?
Do it.
All right, it says, I remember getting Pokemon. This is from Sheldon. I remember getting Pokemon Red with a Game Boy Color for my birthday. I believe I was 7. I didn't get into the anime until later because at the time I was super into Yu-Gi-Oh! But Pokemon sunk its hooks into me, and I've bought one of the games every time new ones have been released. Question for you guys: do you consider the Mew trick? So, considering that the Mew trick was left in the eShop version of the games, do you think it will be able to transfer Mew over through Pokemon Bank? Thank you for the awesome podcast and for bringing together a great community. You guys are awesome. Pokemaster Sheldon. Awesome. So, as far as the Mew trick and like the tricks in general, the glitches and whatnot, I think they're going to treat it the same way that they treat everything else that runs through Pokemon Bank. So there are ways, even currently, to get hacked Pokemon. And in order for, I think basically how it's going to work is that the Pokemon Company and Nintendo and whoever is running this, what they are concerned about, because there are tournaments, there are worldwide tournaments for Pokemon battling every year. Right. And there's big prize money that goes into those things. And so in order for that to be legit, what they've needed to do is develop filters and ways of sensing if a Pokemon is hacked. Now, my understanding of this is that they base it on a few things. They base it on the origin of the Pokemon, which they probably don't have a ton other than just saying this came from the Virtual Console games. They probably don't have a lot of information stored in the game's code on what region or what area of the world you were in. The game wasn't ever programmed for that. The only thing that Pokemon Bank will be able to really glean from 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 the games is what is the Pokemon's number, which is 151 for Mew. What are its stats, and do those fall within the irregular range of stats, right? So like its attack, defense, whatever. If that falls within its permissible range of stats, then that's going to be important. What moves does it know, and can it know those moves? Because there are some methods of hacking in other games where you can teach Pokemon moves that it shouldn't be able to know. So if the glitch has given it a move it shouldn't know, then that's going to reject it.
Like a Pikachu with Fly and Surf?
Yeah, and that's the thing is that
Except
even
for
if
those
you,
are legitimate ones.
yeah, and even the thing is that even in some of those cases, it has rejected, like if you have an event Pokemon from a long time ago that had a special move, it will reject them sometimes. So like there are some there, if it's a perfectly legit Pokemon, it might accept it. I think honestly it's just worth a shot. If you want to do the glitch and try it, go for it. I don't see any problem with that. I honestly, because of how I grew up playing this game and my personal I think nostalgia maybe is the right word for it. How I played this game growing up. I played it with the item duplication cheat. And so as soon as I was able to multiply my Master Balls, I did that. And as far and to multiply rare candies and whatever, right? That's how I chose to play the game when I replayed it. And it was fun. I liked it. So go ahead and do that. And I now have, I've got a Mewtwo and all 3 of the legendary birds that are just sitting there in my PC waiting to be transferred when Sun and Moon come out. So that's that. Right on. Any other thoughts, guys, before we wrap it up?
Video Game Guru says in chat, Missing No is going to be weird.
Missing No, there's no way Missing No transfers. I'm just going to call it now. There is no way Missing No transfers, just simply because it's too weird. Like, it's just too glitchy. It's going to be like, I think they call it like a bad egg in some of the other games when you try and transfer something that's...
What if they actually make something along those lines as a Gen 7 Pokemon and then convert a Missing No into that?
Oh, that would be rad. If they actually had like a weird...
Like a glitch Pokemon.
If it was a glitch Pokemon and it kind of had that shape even... Oh, dude, that'd be... You know what? Part of me thinks that would be cool, and part of me thinks that would be like too on the nose, right? Like, just let it be its own thing and don't make it too weird. But I don't know. Yeah, I can see them potentially saying, okay, if that's the case, then it's gonna transfer and turn it into something, like turn it into a Porygon or something, right? Like something that's kind of inherently like that kind of...
Maybe like a pre-evolution of a Porygon.
Yeah, right. Yeah. See, like that, there's all sorts of possibilities. That'd be super cool. So that is our discussion of Pokemon Gen 1. Any other thoughts before we move on to our discussion for next month, guys?
No, I thought this was a really cool game to play. I had a great time with it, and I love how attached our community got to playing with it as well, and for sharing that. Because, guys, we called for it last time to ask like what your experience was, and getting this experience from you is really, really awesome. And we saw a lot in our line chat about people experiencing it as well. So it's just really incredible. So thank you guys for sharing.
Absolutely. Thanks.
I have a different type of nostalgia, I guess, for this, considering this when I was a kid, this didn't exist. When these were new the first time, I was probably what Roger's age is now. Low 20s. Maybe mid 20s, and so I didn't have the time or the patience to sink in like Zach did to learn all the glitches and whatnot. But I still enjoyed the game.
Right on.
Just because I had a background of enjoying the original JRPGs, the Final Fantasy, the Dragon Quest, And so
Mhm.
I, even though it had a kitty skin on it, I recognized it as instead of a party of 4 or 5, I got a party of 6. They fight.
Mm.
There's not much different here.
And it's all one. It's all one-on-one too, right? Like that's
right. So I enjoyed it for that.
yeah. Did you ever play? Did you ever play the Final Fantasy Legend games on 3D or on Game Boy?
I think I played one of them. I don't
Those were.
remember.
Just remember those were a little rough, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I think I did, but I don't remember anything about it other than I think I did.
Mm-hmm.
I need to try to track those down, those down, and try them again sometime.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Virtual Console, Nintendo, get on that.
Yeah. Right on.
That's what it's there for.
Right on. Well, I'm gonna close us out
I
here.
guess we should be yelling at Square, shouldn't we?
Yeah. As well, by now you're probably hearing some music. Big thanks to OC Remix for our music throughout the end of the show. I'm going to play us out with some of the music. Head over to OC Remix, check them out. They're awesome. As well, they've got some awesome, like they've got 2 albums for free that you can download that are all like Pokemon remixes and stuff. So check them out for sure. As well, if you guys want to follow us on all of the social medias, Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram at Nintendo Dads, you can email us nintendodads@gmail.com. You can find us on YouTube, youtube.com/c/Nintendo Dads, as well as our email, or what, I don't have it in front of me. I'm going off memory here because it's not in these notes. That's okay. Anyways, go over to iTunes. If you want to change the world, by all means, everybody, leave us a 5-star review over on iTunes. Written reviews are even better. And next month, right, Justin, we've got Earthbound.
We have got Earthbound. Again, fan selected by our Patreon supporters who have unlocked the Retro Rewind level. They nominated, they voted, they selected Earthbound, and we're going to play that together. So we're super excited for that. And I know a lot of people have already began jumping into.
Right on. And yeah, absolutely. I just want to say thanks to everybody, all of our patrons. You guys are quite literally the best. So thanks everybody, and we will see you next month for another episode of Retro Rewind. See you later.
Bye-bye.
Schmerp. Okay. Right on. Stop. I'm just going to stop that one.